Hello and welcome to Exchange Me. This is our single episode audio special, and we're going to be featuring a panel of Wichita State alumni who are here to discuss their study abroad experiences. So my name is Jessica Newman. I'm a faculty member here at Wichita State, and I'm honored to moderate this panel for you today. We have with us 4 different alums who all studied at the same institution, but at varying times over the course of the past 15-ish years. So the Fachhochschule Wiener Neustadt in Austria is one of our WSU sister institutions. So they have welcomed many of our business students to their university on exchange over the past many years. Now, before we get into this, I want to take a moment just to meet our panelists. So let's just have each of you tell us who you are, what year you studied abroad, and just what do you do now? So Jason, what about you?
Yeah, thanks. Happy to be here. And I studied at good pronunciation, by the way, of the very long German name that took me years to learn.
I practiced a lot.
The Fachhochschule Wiener Neustadt, which I think translated to, if I remember right, University of Applied Sciences, Wiener Neustadt. I studied back in 2006, 2007. I did 2 semesters. I was looking for something to do at the time in the middle of my bachelor's studies at Wichita State at the Barton School of Business that would, I was just looking to go somewhere. And I remember I looked for a couple of different short trips, like a geology trip, for example. I was looking at doing in Belize, and I was like, maybe there's something I could do a little more valuable for my studies, and I contacted the study abroad coordinator at the time and asked her what I could do for the business side, and she presented basically 3 schools, one of which was this Fachhochschule Wiener Neustadt in Austria, right outside of Vienna, and she's the one who actually talked me into doing 2 semesters, which at the time sounded like a ridiculous idea. So I did 2 semesters there, coming up on 16 years ago now, which seems ridiculous to say that. But it was, some of the others on the call probably can concur, but I would still call it the best time of my life during that time, the most adventurous time, and the most amount of growth by far happened there. Fast forward 16 years later, I've lived in New York. I've lived in Berlin, where I am now, and we're heading back to Vienna. My wife and I, who, as you know, Jessica, I met my wife, Petro, and we were in that exchange semester.
Right.
And that complicated things even more so at the time, obviously. So it's been a wild ride, and I would have absolutely no regrets about it at all, and really excited to be moving back there, which I would have never expected to do.
And so what are you doing now, Jason?
I'm currently in banking. Still in banking. We studied finance all through school. There was an international finance and accounting program that I went back to that same study abroad school for the master's program, which ended up being a very affordable master's degree. Got my first internship over there in Europe. So I was there for a total of 3 of the 4 years, including the study abroad. And then I used that to get my very first job in banking in New York City. So now I'm still in banking, working for Deutsche Bank, and moving on to Erste Bank in Vienna this coming summer.
Gotcha. Thank you. Brayden, what about you?
Sure. Well, I echo a lot of Jason's sentiments from my time at the FH in 2018. I absolutely loved my experience over there. And very interestingly enough, Wiener Neustadt was actually my second choice. I originally went into the study abroad office to speak with Ann Berger, the current study abroad coordinator, and wanted us to go study in England at our partner school over in Chester. And my family's English, and a lot of my aunts and uncles still live over in England, who I got to spend some time with over our Easter break, but I'll get into that later. And then it turns out Chester they had met their quota on exchange students. So, I thought Austria looked wonderful. I was always intrigued by the Austrian culture and just how sophisticated it seemed from afar. And that's what really drew me over to Wiener Neustadt. And it also turned out to be one of the best times of my life. And I can't say enough good things about it. I can't encourage enough people to go abroad and find an experience that suits them. But I think most people would find that Wiener Neustadt is the right place for them. I'm sitting in my apartment here in Wichita for my last few days before I moved to Washington, D.C. I currently work at a nonprofit out of Ohio, and I'm a major gift officer there and have been a fundraiser um, ever since I've been out of college.
That's awesome. Congratulations on the move and the new gig and all of that.
Thank you, but I'm jealous. I wish I was also headed to VM adjacent.
You can come visit anytime.
All right.
All right. Garin, tell us a little bit about you.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me on. Studying abroad was by far one of the best experiences I've ever had in my life. If I had any recommendation for anyone in their undergrad or in a master's program, take that opportunity to go abroad. It's definitely a little bit of a leap of faith because you're going to be living in a foreign country for 5 months to, in Jason's case, 2 whole semesters. But the opportunity to learn and grow just as a person is remarkable. Yeah, Brayden and I were kind of in the same boat there. We studied abroad that second semester our sophomore year in 2018. Wanted to go to England, but like I said, the school in Chester had met their quota. So, and an easier way to say it, the FHW in Wiener Neustadt was our next place to go, and just a fantastic opportunity. A lot of our studies there kind of anchored around sales and marketing, which helped me actually get my job that I'm in now. I just started working for a company based out of Luxembourg over there, kind of in Central Europe. Started that last November as an affiliate business development manager. So essentially working in sales and marketing there, and that experience in Europe and those classes helped kind of tie that gig down for me. So, the doors of opportunity that studying abroad open kind of never end. It's a great, great opportunity.
Okay, so Garin, you and Brayden, you guys studied abroad together, like the same year, is that right?
Yeah, we did. We were there at the same time, hopped on the plane and flew on over.
Awesome.
Were you guys roommates?
We were, yeah. We
Okay.
stayed in the same room over there.
Cool.
Well, and then the coolest part about that is Garin and I were the only 2 Americans
Yep.
at the FH that year. So it really kind of threw us out into some uncharted territory where we really got to adapt and learn to other cultures and really experience that without kind of congregating with other fellow Americans.
Whitney, you studied abroad the same year that Jason did. So tell us a little bit about your experience and where you are now.
So my name's Whitney, and I was a student at the Barton School of Business, and I had been debating whether to major in international business or marketing. So I thought studying abroad would be a good opportunity to help me decide. Also, I've always had a desire to travel. I'd made it over to Europe several trips, just short, week or 2 long trips. And I thought it would be a great opportunity to study abroad and get to experience, more of the countries and cultures that I hadn't got to experience yet. Also, a big deciding factor in picking FH was Jason. So he was over there about to extend his semester into his second semester abroad. And just the positive feedback he had and influence from him really motivated me that, FH would be the right place for me. And it was. It, like the others have said, it was the best 6 months of my life as well.
And Whitney, what are you up to now career-wise?
So right after I graduated from Wichita State, I moved to Nashville, Tennessee. So I've been here, since 2008. I'm actually running my own business. It's a pawn shop, a gun shop. So
Wow.
never thought I'd be a pawnbroker, but that's where life's taken me.
That sounds like a TV show in the making.
It's interesting. It definitely could be.
So we all know there are lots of reasons not to undertake a study abroad experience. It's a really big commitment. It's something that, there's sometimes a lot of fear surrounding it. And a lot of students consider it, but maybe it's a pipe dream. Maybe they don't follow through with it. So for you guys, why did you do it? What was it that took the dream of studying abroad from just an idea to a commitment?
I came into college knowing that I wanted to study abroad. I really didn't know where. I thought it was England. And then I found Austria, and I'm so glad that I did. I forgot to mention that I majored in international business, and within our curriculum, we have time built in where we have to go get a cross-cultural experience. And so it's a very seamless part of our education. And so for me, it was very easy because it was built in order to get my degree. And I love telling people that I was forced to go abroad because it really was just like twist my arm and send me out of here. But Garin and I were sitting around. Garin and I knew each other in college and were good friends. And we were sitting around our fraternity house one day, and I said, "Gosh, I got to go to abroad. I'm looking at a couple schools in England and Austria." And Garin kind of perked up and said, "Well, that would be cool." And then I don't know, Garin, you want to go from there?
Yeah, I'm kind of on the exact opposite, but I had never considered studying abroad at all until, like Brayden mentioned, we were all sitting around the table and he brought it up. And I thought, yeah, that'd be kind of neat. Let's see what happens. And when we were getting ready for this podcast, I was thinking about how that went. He had talked about it, and all the way up until the point of landing in Munich when we first got over there, it was just kind of like this dream. It didn't seem real. We talked about it. I was like, yeah, I'll do it. But it was such a big thought. Like, there's no way this is real. Just kind of went through the steps, getting a passport, booking our flights, figuring everything out, and one little step led to another. And I have to give, a lot of credit to Brayden, kind of helped push me along that bit to get over there. And then you land in Europe in another country for 5 months. And it's just, wow.
But, Jessica, going back to your point, I understand how intimidating it might be to make that leap of faith. As Garin said earlier, it was something I wanted to do, but until I pulled the trigger and bought that flight, it became very real. And then stepping off the plane in Munich was just almost a sobering experience. I had traveled a lot when I was younger and was familiar with all that entails, but until I stepped off that plane and they weren't making announcements in English and, they were smoking in the airport, it was just, I'll never forget that moment.
I can imagine. All right. So you all have alluded to this in some capacity, but I'd just be interested if anybody had anything they wanted to add to it. The question of why Austria? You guys do have many different options in Europe, as well as, several institutions in Asian countries as well. So again, you've kind of added some things there, but would anybody like to add anything else about why Wiener Neustadt stuck out to you or why you decided to choose it?
I would give a couple thoughts on that. Like I said, at the time, we had 3 options. After speaking to Ann Berger in the study abroad office, currently there are some additional options, I think, in France and Spain and possibly another place. So there's maybe a handful more of options. But the Austria is still extremely attractive for a number of reasons. One being it's such a central location within Europe. You have pretty much the same distance to any major city because of its central location, as opposed to having to fly all the way across Europe to get to the other side or to the north or the south or what have you. So we were able to every weekend pretty much. We stayed in the dorms very, very occasionally on the weekends. We would always travel and take advantage of student discount cards for the trains and the cheap flights with Ryanair and some of these cheaper airlines. And it was extremely affordable to see all of Europe and take our time, not do the typical American style 1 week, 2 week Europe trip, but really get to know the different cultures and see how different Czech Republic is from Austria, from Germany and France. And, the nearest capital is Bratislava, and it's a 40-minute train right away. So that was a big sell for me. The FH, the school at the time, offered a couple of school-supported excursions as well. So that got me in the mindset of thinking about travel and what I really wanted to get out of the year there.
How Jason touched on the opportunity to travel from Wiener Neustadt, I think is probably unmatched. One, Vienna is a 30-minute train ride away, and Vienna is probably one of the coolest cities on the planet. I think it's ranked like the #1 best city year after year for great reason. So we were there. If we weren't in another city every other weekend, then the opportunity to fly or take a train anywhere from Austria. It's just so easy being right there in the middle. And then one of the other local things is the school-sponsored excursions that we went on. A couple of those were some of the greatest opportunities that we had. One of them, we went whitewater rafting through the Alps, which was crazy cool. and going to see the Hallstatt Lake and different big cities in Austria. There's really cool opportunities that you wouldn't have the opportunity to do being anywhere else.
That's nice that you had that kind of guidance, that you weren't, did you all feel that? I'd be curious to know if anybody else had kind of either the guidance, or were you told what to expect before you went, or how to make the most of it from the study abroad office?
Anne and her team, they do a wonderful job of preparing you to really kind of know what to expect. And they handle the logistics so well that there was really no uncertainty from the time we left. We flew out of Washington, D.C., that we knew the logistics were planned out and that things were going to be fine. And they were. But again, that's just such a shocking moment when we arrived. And Garin and I, we walked into our dorm room. We got to Wiener Neustadt at night, and we had a buddy greet us from the school. They paired us with an international buddy that studied there. And he met us, and we just walked into our room. We both went into our individual rooms, and we sat, didn't say a word for probably 30 minutes, and we're just taking it all in.
So let's stay there for a minute. Let's talk culture shock, because I think that there's equal parts sort of excitement and fear when you're considering an experience like this, or when you first get there. It's brand new. You either don't know anyone or very few people, and everything around you is different. So I would love to hear from you guys a bit about what the culture was like in Austria. Was it what you expected? Did anything surprise you? So Garin, what are some of your thoughts on that?
Absolutely, yeah. That the culture shock is a good one for me, because I had the absolute high and absolute low on both sides. We landed in Munich, and we're there for a few days before heading to Austria. And during that first probably week or a few days when it was getting there, was the culture shock on the exciting side. It was like, wow, new place, new people, all kinds of exciting things going on. It was traveling kind of like a vacation is what it more felt like. And then Brayden mentioned, we got to the dorms and sat down, and then it kind of hit us like, oh my goodness, we are here for the next 5-6 months, and this is our life now. And so it kind of immediately flipped over to, I got really, really homesick and kind of physically ill, and it was a little bit of a struggle for that first little bit, but kind of once you get past there, it evens out to just a world of opportunity. And the culture in Austria is exceptional. When the food, the beer, the great times. The first big culture shock was we went out for the first time with everyone that was in our study abroad program from all over the world, and took the train to Vienna late at night, probably 10 p.m. and went out to the clubs and the nightlife and had fun and everything. Here in the U.S., we're used to, we're done by midnight, 2 a.m. You go to bed and you're good to go. But over there, they keep going till the break of dawn. And Brayden and I and a few other people were sitting on the train heading back to Wiener Neustadt from Vienna. We look out the window, the sun starts to come up, and we both just look at each other like, what have we gotten ourselves into? Really great experience getting to be in that new culture.
I remember that as well. Is the 5 or 6 a.m. ending times were a huge adjustment, especially if you were going into Vienna and taking the train back, and even things like public transportation was something I wasn't familiar with, driving all around Kansas for my entire life, and then all of a sudden you're taking trains everywhere and subways, and a lot of times those trains they didn't run as often, especially at night. So it ended up by the end of the year, I waiting 45 minutes for a train ride didn't even faze me anymore, and you really learned a new level of patience for things and awareness of time. It was really interesting.
I remember you just trying to learn you would talk to us about trying to learn the bus schedules or train schedules or whatever. And as somebody who had not grown up with much public transportation, I remember that being a huge thing that you had to learn.
Yeah.
Put you on.
I'm laughing here, Jessica, because when Garin and I landed in Munich, I think that was the first time we'd both really taken like a public bus from the airport and we're watching on Google Maps where we needed to get off for our Airbnb, and we knew we were the next stop, and it just kept driving. We didn't realize you needed to pull the chain to alert the driver to stop. And we're just looking at each other like, that was it. We just saw it. What do we do now? And it was just it was a little bit of chaos, but man, it was a good time.
So I know some of you mentioned that, so I can't remember who said it, but somebody said, that a lot of people in Austria speak English, so that wasn't as, hard as maybe you thought it would be. But I'm curious which of you, if you knew German before you arrived, did you take German classes while you were there? What was that language barrier like?
But I had a really interesting experience with the language. I didn't know any German before I got over there, but I was pretty fluent in Spanish. So I was in an upper level Spanish class, which was taught by an Austrian that only spoke German. So here I was the only American in the class, and I could keep up when she was speaking Spanish. But then when other students had questions, they would ask in German and she would respond in German. And at that point, I was totally lost.
It's a lot of languages for one room.
And then going, I was starting to pick up on the language when I was over there. And then I'd be so proud of myself if, when I went into a little market and ordered like cheese bread in German, and then I would say thank you in Spanish.
Just whatever you got, you can use.
And so several of you mentioned that you specifically chose Austria because of its kind of central location within Europe and the travel opportunities. And that's something that we see oftentimes is when you go abroad, it's not just about going to that one place. It's about how much can I experience in this, 5 or 10 months that you're there. So let's talk about some of the other travel opportunities and maybe specifically how you managed that in terms of budgeting and, making sure that you had enough money, that you were experiencing all that you could, but still living within the means. Jason mentioned some student discounts and some cheap flights and things like that. So I'd love to hear from some of the rest of you about maybe how you managed traveling while you were there.
One of my favorite trips over Easter, I took a train up to Prague to pick up a friend that was studying in Prague. And then we flew from Prague to Barcelona to southern Spain, checked out Gibraltar, went down to Africa for a day, flew over to Italy for Easter, and then spent like a week and a half in Greece. And all of that, I think all of the transportation expenses maybe amounted to like $200 or $300. So with a lot of planning, you could find some really good deals, especially on those airfare sites that had like the penny deals where you only pay the taxes.
Wow.
What I did when I first got over there was just, planned out several trips in advance, because especially if you're looking at flights, the later you book, the more expensive.
Sure.
Yeah, they had a train discount card. I think it was called the 4 Tiles card. It was for under 26. That was quite cheap. I think it was for a semester or so that you could get it. Exactly like Whitney said, the flights are sometimes even cheaper or oftentimes cheaper than the train, even with the discount. But yeah, planning, and we were able to live extremely cheaply. The dorms were pretty cheap. That's one thing I wanted to mention as well on why Austria is that you've got Vienna right there, as Garin mentioned earlier. If you do want to go for those late night 5 or 6 a.m.ers and experience the city and the sightseeing as well. But Wiener Neustadt outside of Vienna, where the school is extremely affordable compared to a big city like Vienna. So you're not looking at Vienna rent prices. You're just staying in a nice accommodation in a smaller town. And we spent a lot of time in Wiener Neustadt, just the exchange students. It was so much fun we called it the common room. There was a common room in the dorm, and we would, every night somebody would cook. The Spanish exchange students would cook something one night, and then we'd do some burgers the next, and then the Austrians would cook something for us. So that was really, really cool. And just having some drinks in the common room and talking about how things were going was one of the most important and special parts of it. And I would say on par with the traveling.
Yeah, if we could take the United Nations and put them in that common room, I think we could make a lot more progress around the
Oh
world.
yeah.
it,
We
it,
need
it
that
was
right now.
it was such a good time at the accommodations, and never once did I think that I would be celebrating the Chinese New Year and doing a prosperity toss of all our food in Wiener Neustadt, Austria. That's not really high on your list of things of experiences that you think that are going to happen. But one of the things that I kind of regret is not spending more time in Wiener Neustadt
Yeah.
and really appreciating what was right next to you. And while we spent, a lot of time within the town, but I think we kind of took that for granted. And I wish, hindsight's always 2020, but I wish I could go back and really embrace the town. And Garin and I and a couple of our friends befriended one of the local bakers, Heinz at what was the name of the cafe, Garin? Cafe Firstal? Was that it?
I believe so, yeah.
Oh gosh, he loved that young people took an interest in coming to his store, and always took such good care of us. So it was really neat to interact with the locals.
Yeah, that was by far the best sandwich I've ever had in my life, and the best amaretto latte out of my life.
And what did they make for you guys? What kind of sandwich was it?
Oh gosh, Brayden, do you remember?
I don't. Was it like a turkey sandwich? They had some special sauce that he
Yes,
put on it, and it was so good.
it was.
And I think when my mom came over to visit, and Garin, was your mom there at the same time? We all went together, right?
Yeah, both our moms came over and we all went there.
That sounds like a good time.
And Heinz he sent us home with goodie bags of food,
Yep.
and we paid for maybe every one of 4 meals. I mean, it just because we struck up a conversation with him right when we first got there. And then when Garin and I were taking the train home in July when we were leaving, we said we have to go have one more lunch at Heinz's shop, and he was gone for the day.
Oh no.
So we were crushed as we were eating that we weren't going to get to say goodbye to Heinz and thank him for all the hospitality he showed us. And we asked the woman that was working if she could call Heinz and just say his American buddies say goodbye. And he came up to the shop from whatever he was doing. He ran up there to give us some more treats to take on the train and shake our hands and say goodbye.
Oh, that's
amazing.
really sweet.
Yeah.
Austrians are so incredibly open. They're not as maybe it's a smaller country. So growing up, I always heard about Switzerland, obviously Germany, but in terms of the German-speaking countries, I didn't know very much about Austria. The culture is so prone to welcoming people in and showing you how they do things. And I've been invited skiing numerous times, even though I can't ski at all. And they just enjoy people, and they enjoy life and culture. So that was a really cool part that I noticed.
So we talked about traveling and things like that, but what about just the daily grind? When it came to fitting in things like grocery shopping and sort of fitting your life into this new location, including the academics, of course, what was a, let's say, typical day like? So maybe Garin, you could take this one.
Yeah. Well, a typical day for us, probably wake up around 11 to noon. And then we would go, we had a couple of our best friends from over there. One was from Finland and the other, Netherlands. Is that where she was from, Brayden?
Yeah, she's from the Netherlands.
Yeah. And then we would all link up around the campus. And that was the majority of just our day-to-day, outside of going to class. That was the majority of the time we spent just sitting outside. We all got blankets and had little picnics all the time, and just hung out, because one of the biggest things when you're there is you have class, but that's kind of the only responsibilities that you have. And at least when Brayden and I were there, the school did a wonderful job of working with the exchange students, and we were all there on this magical experience, really, and the school kind of realized that. All of our professors realized that, and so it was really easy. Hey, we're going to be out of class this day, traveling. They'd be like, okay, great, let's get your work done whenever. But the day-to-day was nice. I think probably the most shocking or difference in day-to-day life, as someone mentioned just a bit ago, was grocery shopping. If you've ever been to an Aldi's here, take that times 100. in terms of the speed and the hustle, and that is a grocery shopping adventure over there.
Oh gosh.
I was a bag boy in Goddard, Kansas for one of my first jobs, and they don't do that over there. You have to bag your own stuff. You have to buy your bags. Most people bring their bags, but if you got a grocery cart full of stuff, you better be ready to not only pay, but in parallel sack it all up and get out of there because the next person's coming through. That was definitely stressful.
So I'm sure you all felt varying levels of this, but did you get homesick? And if and when you did, what were some things that helped you get through that?
If anybody were to get homesick, it would have been me. I'm very, very close with my family. I still call my mom about 5 to 10 times a day, and I kept in touch with them when I was over there as well. But you know what? I didn't really have time to get homesick. I mean, I always had something, to look forward to, whether it be, just a local experience with the students or, planning my next trip to a new country. So I stayed in constant touch with my family, but I honestly never really did get homesick.
I remember you saying that, Whitney. One of the days you were talking about, because you did go for a lot of runs. I think you may have even invited me once, but you said you went for 90 minutes sometimes, so I politely declined. But I remember you saying, gosh, when I came over here, I had a plan. I had a plan that if things went really bad and I was homesick and I hated it, then I would just at least use it as an opportunity to focus on myself and to run all the time and just clear my head and exercise all the time. And you said, but that didn't happen. It's everything. You were so busy and things, the other students, the fellow students were something I think I didn't expect to have such a bond with them, and the time just flew by.
It did.
I agree with both of you. I didn't really face the homesickness part. I think you just go out there, you make friends, you keep yourself busy, and I stayed in touch with people at home, so that was nice. But I'm gonna kind of punt it to Garin because, Garin, I want you to share kind of your experiences with what you went through with homesickness and to the point where you thought about even ending your semester early and coming back and how glad you are you stayed, because there might be people out there that might want to hear that side.
Absolutely, yeah. So I definitely got really, really homesick for probably a week or two shortly after arriving to the dorms in Wiener Neustadt, so much so that I actually got physically sick for part of that too. It just kind of all hit that, I was gone, had a bunch of connections back home and was really missing that and the people and just kind of all these different emotions. Thankfully, Brayden was a great help. The friends that we had met there were helpful. And I have to say, people back home really supported me. And they were also were kind of like, no, you're not gonna come home early. You're there and you're gonna stay there. But one cool thing, the school was actually really helpful too. And that bit, but kind of how you guys mentioned, staying busy and the friends. Probably the first little trip we went on was a little train excursion, not too far away to this little Austrian town. And that kind of moment, that was the turning point, I think, for me. I felt, really, really homesick, but then we got together with our friends, went on that little trip, and then, everything kind of started to fall into place and feel better that, we're in this crazy new world and this life for a decent amount of time, but the experiences and the opportunities are incredible. And yeah, like Brayden mentioned, I was considering coming back and kind of looking at that option, but I am so thankful that I stayed. I mean, the experience is truly a once in a lifetime. I think we have all mentioned it multiple times. This was probably the best time of our lives being over there, meeting people, seeing the world from a different mindset. So it's absolutely worth every bit of it.
Now, I know you all met. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to throw something in. It's because we took him to McDonald's after we went on that train trip. It killed everything.
The McDonald's in Austria is supreme.
The Schnitzel burger, I remember that one.
Yep.
How is it different? How's it different than an American McDonald's? I'm so interested in this.
Oh man, I just remembered the McChickens had this like sweet Asian chili sauce on it that was just superb. It's like 9 bits or whatever it was. And they had these wraps. I mean, the food was just So good.
Did anybody else appreciate the McDonald's as much as Garin, or was that kind of just a him thing?
I had to bring my own bottle of ketchup with me when I went in there.
Oh yeah.
Right. That's the one bad thing about it over there is they're so stingy on sauces, and you pay for it all.
Yeah, you pay for every packet of ketchup, and you have to. They don't ask you, "Do you want ketchup?" You have to say, "Can I have 3 packages of ketchup?" And they say, "Sure. Here's 30 cents per package, and we'll add it to your order."
I think the only downside is the fountain drinks at the McDonald's over there. Brayden had a conniption fit dealing with those.
Yeah, I'm a big Coke drinker, and that was rough because there is a difference in the taste of the Coca-Cola over there. And so that when I got home, when we flew back into Washington, D.C., I told my girlfriend, all I want is a Coke and a hamburger.
And did they have ice, Brayden, at the back then? At McDonald's,
No.
at least, or was it no ice?
So they served it without ice, which is actually how I
Yeah.
prefer it.
Okay.
But that's something that's not common here in the States at all.
Yeah, even where I am now in Berlin, it's you can't just go to the store and get bags of ice, especially in the summer, if you're trying to do a cooler or go camping. It's totally different. Occasionally, I'll find one with tiny bags of ice, but for the most part, I've got a ton of freezer space dedicated to making my own ice.
So what about meeting people? You all met tons of new people. I'm sure you made lots of new friends. Are those friends that you still stay in touch with? Obviously, Jason found his wife there, so obviously he stays in touch in some capacity. But I'm curious to know what those friendships look like now if you did meet people on exchange.
Garin and I's room was right at the front of our dorm, and so all the exchange students had to walk past our dorm. And we would just keep our door open, and you never really knew who was going to walk by, but they'd always yell something or come in and talk to you. And, Garin can attest to this. I'm pretty social, and I'll talk to about anybody or anything. And so, we developed a really good friendship with a lot of with most of the people that studied there. And it was so much so that sometimes they would say, "Where's Brayden's roommate?" Because I just interacted with them so much. And no, so there was a core group of our friends that we traveled a lot together with, and we still maintain some touch with today. I mean, of course, you kind of just friendships drift, but I would say if we all met at a pub or somewhere today, it would be just like it was 4 years ago, and we'd pick right back up where we left off. And Snapchat and WhatsApp have been so good to stay in touch and just see, even though you might not talk to them, you can see what they're up to, and it's been so great.
Yeah, I would add to that and say that I've got friends all over the world now, which is a weird thing to say, but I had a really, really close friendship with a group of Icelandic guys that were there. We were always sitting together on the train and hanging out in each other's rooms, and we just got along really, really well. I've met them several times when I lived in New York, and once when I was visiting Wiener Neustadt again years later, and the other guy happened to be there as well. Visited Mexico City about 4 or 5 years ago now, and there was a David, a Mexican exchange student that was there in 2006. I just randomly looked him up on Facebook and I said, "Do you still live here?" And he did, and we went out for dinner, and we saw some lucha libre together. So it's so casual, and people are just so willing to meet up again, and their friendships really do last forever, because you're in such an uncomfortable situation together that becomes very comfortable because you're with each other.
I'm not a very emotional person, and I tell you what, when we got on that train with our friends at the airport to say goodbye, I did really good throughout that whole day, and we're sitting down at the airport for our last meal together, and I lost it. I cried like a baby.
Yeah.
Because I was so sad to say goodbye to friends that you felt like you knew for a lifetime, even though it was really 5 months, because you do go through that experience together and you grow with one another. And it was just such a weird thing to think you've become so close and now they're gone, but they're not, because you can pick right back up.
Yeah, I was gonna add that the first time Brayden and I cried the whole time was at the very end, sitting together at the airport as our friends would fly back home. And it really is like you make a family. Those people you're closest with become your family for 5-6 months while you're there. And well, like you said, it's hard to say goodbye. You stay connected, and you truly, they really are lifelong friends.
This wasn't on our question sheet, but I'm just going to go rogue here and ask it. I'm curious about the reintegration back home, because exactly what you just said, first you leave home to go there, but then by the end, that feels like home to you. What was it like coming back to your old life and trying to adjust and, reverse culture shock, I suppose?
I'm so glad you brought that up, Jessica, because I forgot about that. But it was so hard for me to adjust back home that I think I faced. There's a term for it, and I want to call is it reverse culture shock?
Yeah, reverse culture.
Like you come back home and you left such a high experience that you lived every day, and you come back home to kind of life as normal, and it's really kind of a downer. Not to which sounds terrible, but I really struggled reintegrating back. And then you kind of one day at a time it gets better, but I forgot about that.
So as we prepare to close up this podcast episode, I would love for you guys to share some of your most memorable moments. If there's just something that stands out, again, maybe safe for work experiences, just something that you'll never forget.
One of the first trips that we took as one of those school sponsored trips was to Venice, but during the carnival. So that was just such a eye-opening, experience. I mean, there were, hundreds of thousands of people shoulder to shoulder on this little, in this such a small area, and everybody was dressed up. And I mean, it was just really neat to get to partake in something like that. So that being one of the first trips, set a high standard, for everything else to follow. And I mean, just every trip I took was, just lots of good memories.
Yeah, for me, I would say, so back then, 16 years ago now, the Skype was brand new, so we were, conversations dropped every 2 seconds, and just, technology wasn't great. So, and I was a very poor student. So I had a flip phone, I think, minute by minute flip phone, no GPS or anything. And then my flip phone had died in the meantime. And yeah, I went out for a run. It was, I was going to try to go to Burgenland, which is a beautiful vineyards section of Austria, where you can just, I had ridden my bike through there with one of the buddy exchange Austrian students that had helped me get started with things. And he'd take me through a bike ride where you can pick grapes straight off the vines. I don't know if we were supposed to do that, but we did do that. And they're really, really amazing quality grapes. And you could think about how that gets turned into wine. And most of the wine in Austria is white wine. You'll if you go study there, it's a really, really good white wine. Burgenland is known for its red wine. So there were these deep red colored grapes. And I thought that'd be awesome just to go run down there. And I completely overestimated how long it would take to get there. And then, yeah, I took several wrong turns, and I didn't run the whole time, but I just kept walking until I found a town that had a bus, and then used my new public transportation skills and my minimum German to work my way back to the dorms. And it was about 6 hours.
I think when I kind of look back at one of my favorite memories of my time in Austria it was right at the end, and our German classes we took over there being only the exchangers. So our German professor, Heinz Witte, invited us up to his home, which was outside Wiener Neustadt, for a celebratory day after we took our final. And I just remembered thinking how foreign it is that a professor just invited us to their home to go have wine and traditional Austrian food. Like, I couldn't ever think of a time in America where that would happen. And so we trained, all of us exchangers trained up to his home, and he hosted us pond and had wine, and he prepared a whole spread for us. And it was just such a pinnacle of our experience to really cap off the last 5-6 months we were there. And just such a neat opportunity for us all to share one last time together before we all went our separate ways. And that was definitely a highlight for me.
And I think when I think back of it, one story that comes to mind that kind of adds to the spontaneity of the whole adventure of studying abroad. It was just some random night, kind of in the middle of the exchange semester. Myself and one of the people we became really good friends with, we were just sitting in, and somehow the conversation came up of how we both really enjoyed the artist Lana Del Rey. And after a couple of glasses, decided that, we're just going to go see where she's at and go visit. So looked it up, saw that she was playing in Barcelona within a couple of weeks, and within a few minutes had the concert tickets booked, the flights booked, and an Airbnb booked. And that was the beginning of that story. It all just happened, so randomly and so quickly over a little bit of wine and the dorms. And so many adventures happen that way. You're just hanging out with some friends, and someone mentions a place or wanting to do something, and all of a sudden you're all on your way to a new adventure. That's kind of sums up an abroad semester. Just a really, really good opportunity of new adventures.
And how was the concert?
It was fantastic. The venue, I mean, I love Lana Del Rey forever. So her and I went, it was just the coolest concert, great food and beers. The venue was crazy. It was on this hill that overlooked the city and some other mountains. So just a gorgeous place and a lot of fun.
Well, Jason, I forgot to mention that we met for coffee when I was in Berlin. And I had that
Berlin
in my notes penciled in, because Jessica, I knew you at WSU when you worked in admissions, and you said, hey, you connected Jason and I, and it worked out. And it just really proves, what a great time that was to share kind of stories from Jason's time, as I was newly in Wiener Neustadt. I think I was only there for a couple of weeks at that point. But, it also proves really what a small world it is, that there's people out there that you're just 1 degree away from, regardless of where you're at.
Yeah, and Berlin wasn't even anything common to us at all. We just happened to be that I had moved there relatively recently, I think at the time. This was 3 or 4 years ago, right?
Yeah.
And then you kind of knew Jessica somehow, or you worked with her, right? And then that was a fun coffee, because I love talking about those times, and even now in this podcast, it's a lot of fun. And you and I didn't know each other before that at all, and it felt like we were old friends just for that hour.
Yeah, no, it was great.
It's
And comforting.
It's been interesting hearing how similar your guys' experiences were, even though there was a decade in between. Not to make Whitney and Jason feel really old there, but it's interesting how similar those experiences were, from you and Garin's time to Whitney and Jason's time.
Absolutely. It's bringing it back.
Yeah, and the school itself is it's a credit to them, because they're extremely consistent with their program, and they're always building. And like I mentioned before, I went back for the master's program. It's also all a completely English program that they were offering, and that they still offer. And it wasn't like the exchange, because with the exchange trip, you can really just focus on yourself. You don't have to worry about working. You're not allowed to work, because if you're on a student visa, you don't have to worry about as much of the grind as you normally would. The classes are extremely good. I learned a lot of my finance knowledge and the fundamentals of international accounting and these types of classes that were offered from the school in Austria. But it wasn't like this, like Whitney mentioned, jump from work to school to family to work to school to keeping up your existing friendships. It was so chill, and you were able to really just put all of your focus into yourself. And with that comes this relieving feeling that you can carry with you when you do go back to the grind. And then the master's program, when I went back for it, it was more of the grind. It wasn't really the whole travel all the time. It was more focus, and had to figure out how to fund it, because you start to, a semester or a year you can plan for and save for, and do very cheaply. But the 2-year program was a little bit more complicated in that respect. But that's the credit to the school. They kept quality through the whole 16 years it looks like, and they're always trying to find new ways to bring in students.
So is there anything anybody else would like to add on that maybe I didn't ask you about, or just anything else you'd like to toss in before we close up?
If there's anybody out there that's kind of on the fence, or scared about making the leap, just go for it. My college roommate, she was supposed to go study abroad the same time I did. She was going to go to Chester, actually, and she backed out at the last minute because she was in a relationship, and she just really regrets it. And, once you graduate and get a career, it's going to be a lot harder to, experience something like this.
Yeah, that's a good point. Do long distance. If you have a long life ahead of you. If you guys can't get through a semester long distance, it's a good sign. Do the exchange trip.
Yeah. Morgan and I did long distance, and we've been doing long distance for 4 years now, and it finally ends on Thursday. And
yay!
Congratulations.
So I couldn't agree more, Whitney. Like, just do it, and you won't regret it. The only people that I know that regret it are the ones that didn't do it.
Yeah. The experiences that we had, the memories we made, the friendships we made will last a lifetime. So it's the best advice I think any of us can give is just do it. Just take the step, take that leap of faith, and it'll change your life for the better.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. Thanks to all 4 of you for being willing to be a part of this podcast special. It was an absolute pleasure having you guys on the show. And for anybody that is listening, I hope that you guys have been inspired by the stories that you've heard, and maybe you are further encouraged to take that thought in the back of your mind that says, maybe I should study abroad, and turn that thought into a reality. We do have an awesome team here in the Wichita State Study Abroad office, and several of the panelists kind of alluded to that, but the Study Abroad office will walk you through the entire process in a really simple and easy to understand way. So if you would like some more information about that, you can go to wichita.edu/studyabroad. You can contact the office directly from there, or they also have monthly information sessions that just go over in general what study abroad might look like if you were to embark on this adventure. So thanks again to everyone for joining us, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you all.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, guys.